Good morning, everyone. My name is Shanika. Welcome to our World's Environment Day 2025 webinar. The title of the webinar is Our Environmental Mandate from Me to We, Empowering Individuals' Actions for a Collective Future. Thank you for joining us from near and far. Today, we explore how individual actions, when united, become powerful forces for environmental change. This event brings together voices and ideas that inspires us to act not just for ourselves, but for our community, our planet, and future generations. I will be hosting this webinar with four of my colleagues. Can I get my colleagues to wait for me, please? Thank you. To begin this presentation, we acknowledge the lands which constitute the present day's City of Mississauga as being part of the treaty and traditional territories of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat and Wyandot nations. We recognize these people and their ancestors as people who inhabited these lands since time immemorials. The city of Mississauga is home to many global Indigenous people. So just a little bit of scan that I wanted to tell about is that Sustainable Community Aid Network is a community-based organization committed to building inclusive, sustainable future through education, engagement, and advocacy. At the heart of SCAN's mission is to believe that climate action must be equitable and meaningful environmental change starts with informed, empowered communities. Through a range of culturally responsive programs, including environmental education, climate justice webinars, youth entrepreneurship, and food security initiative, SCAN works at the intersection of environmental sustainability and social equity. By centering lived experience of marginalized and racialized groups, SCAN ensures that no one is left behind in the transition to a greener Canada. In alignment with World Environment Day 2025, SCAN proudly hosts our environmental mandate from me to we webinar and leads to the awareness to action campaign. The campaign is designed to help participants go beyond education, encouraging real localized action through community collaboration, personal accountability, and shared resources. So why do we do this work? Because sustainability is not just about environment, it's about people. SCAN believes that when communities understand their environmental mandate and feel seen and supported in the process, they become powerful agents of a change. Now, moving on, I'm going to be talking about our Environment Buzz magazine. Environment Buzz magazine is a leading voice in environmental, social, and governance storytelling, empowering individuals, businesses, and communities to share their sustainability journey and inspire meaningful change. We are ranked number 16 in the top 25 ESG magazines on the web and number 12 among green business blogs by FeedSpot. Environment Buzz reaches over 43,000 unique visitors weekly. With features published weekly, the magazine provides a high impact platform to showcase progress, raise ESG profiles, and build credibility in the global sustainability space. As a proud partner of From Me to We webinar and the Awareness to Action campaign, EnvironBuzz is committed to amplifying voices that are turning climate consciousness into tangible, community-rooted actions. Here is a breakdown on what we will be talking about today. We will be having four amazing speakers with us today, and they will be introducing different stages of the webinar. We will then get the keynote presentation on the environment mandate in Canada, your role in our future by one of our speakers. Then we'll move on to the future presentation. And then next, we will be doing a quick activity that includes an interactive poll and breakout icebreaker. And then we'll then introduce the last two speakers, and they will talk about the great work they will be doing with their organizations. And immediately after, we'll be having a panel discussion. We will give you an opportunity to ask questions. Please put all your questions in the chat. My colleague will lead you to a pledge walk laughter and will present the community challenges that we aligned up during the campaign. Our founder will say a few words about our upcoming webinars and challenges and close our presentation. Now it's time for the keynote presentation. Karen has worked as a journalist and as a labor and community organizer. She has participated in her downtown Toronto housing cooperative for more than 20 years, an active transportation enthusiast who favors walking, cycling, and public transit. Karen has never owned a car. She is a voracious reader and has spent her adult life trying to unlearn the common belief that humans should strive for domination over each other, over other animals, and over nature itself. She's passionate about helping to get plastic out of the environment. I'll now pass it on to Karen.
Thank you very much. The title of the little presentation I'm going to make, talking about going from me to we, is called Our Governments Need to Pick a Path, and they need us to show them the right one. As you're probably aware, the planet is facing three overlapping environmental crises: climate change, the loss of biodiversity, as in the loss of a variety and sheer number of plants and animals in the world, as well as pollution. These crises pose threats to the lifeways and livelihoods of billions of people around the world, including right here in Canada, where thousands of square kilometers of forest are burning right now in what has become an annual tragedy of out-of-control wildfires. It's tempting to look away from these crises and focus on our own daily concerns. That may be part of the reason these issues all but disappeared from the table during the last provincial and federal elections. Most of us accepted that the only issue worth worrying about was US President Donald Trump. But the major industries that feed these environmental crises, big oil, big plastic, big tech, and big finance, are promoting their own growth and enrichment as the answer to global instability, including Trump's trade war. And politicians, not least in Canada, are listening to them at the expense of the priorities that meet the needs of the majority of us: safe housing, access to education and healthcare, nutritious food, clean drinking water. I say all of this not to demoralize you, even though I feel the weight of these contradictions myself. I say this because if we don't speak truth to ourselves and to power, it will become that much more difficult to get back to what we truly need. The world will not enjoy peace, stability, and cooperation while international law is openly flouted to allow the ongoing genocide in Gaza. We can't stop racism and discrimination without confronting white supremacy and nationalism. Canada cannot stake its future on continued oil and gas extraction and stop climate change. There can't be reconciliation with Indigenous people while settler governments invoke a state of emergency to override rights and laws in order to ram through unwanted and destructive development. We can't keep producing and buying more stuff without creating more polluting waste. Really, we can't have an economy without nature. These are some of the choices we face as a society, and they really are stark. We need to pull our governments back from making destructive decisions about how to use our collective resources and exercise their power over people. That has to be priority one for any organization or movement that seeks to defend clean water, a safe climate, and healthy communities. And that happens to be the motto of environmental defense, where I work, to stop plastic pollution. So what do we do as humans who care about the future of the planet, of all the beings who live in it, and about all our relationships with it and with each other? I'm going to suggest there are 4 things that we each need to hold on to in order to be in a position to make sure the bigger decisions don't destroy us collectively. 1, stay connected with your people. Eat together, dream together, share experiences, support each other. This is the best way to counter isolation and hopelessness that leads to sadness, disengagement, and pessimism. We spend so much time online, consuming content fed to us by organizations that do not share our goals and interests. It's vital to counter that by spending time and engaging in conversations with people who do share those goals. Our movements need the energy that comes from people who are connected to each other and to the world around them. 2, question things that don't make sense. All day, every day, we're bombarded with messages that originate in advertising agencies, lobby firms, and think tanks funded by some of the world's most powerful people in industries, including the fossil fuel industry and big tech. We need to know how to spot disinformation and challenge it, whether that's coming out of the mouths and keyboards of powerful people or just a friend or neighbor. Just this week, Canada's premiers and the Prime Minister issued a statement about nation building that mentioned decarbonized Canadian oil, as if that's a real thing. In fact, it's shameless doublespeak promoted by the oil industry. Oil is carbon. Extracting, refining, and burning fossil fuel is the most carbon intense and climate warming human activity ever. It's okay to challenge powerful people when they say silly things, from the Prime Minister to a favorite uncle who shares a misleading meme on his Facebook feed. 3, make conscious decisions based on what's truly best for you and for the people around you, as well as the planet. Most days, it feels like we control very little of what's going on around us, but we do make decisions every day, and we can make those count. For example, prioritizing reuse, repair, and sharing instead of buying new stuff we don't really need, walking, biking, or taking the bus instead of jumping into a car, turning away from our phones and getting outside, extending a hand to someone who needs it, writing, calling, and meeting our local politicians to find out what motivates them and to make sure they know what's important to us. These are a few things that we can do to live more consciously. And 4, and finally, engage in solidarity. Life is tough for a lot of people right now. What makes it worse is a growing tendency to scapegoat some groups of people, as the Trump regime is doing with migrants from the global south, activists demanding justice for Palestine, and LGBTQ people, as if they are causing the world problem. In Canada, this has helped soften the ground for emergency laws that seek to trample the rights of Indigenous people and refugee claimants. The only way we're going to get the world we need is if more and more of us show solidarity with people and groups being singled out for this kind of punishment. By building mutual support, we build movements that can push for the right path forward for the planet. So that's my recipe. Stay connected with your people, question things that don't make sense, make conscious decisions every day, and engage in solidarity. Thanks so much for inviting me to participate in this important event.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing your insights and the important work of environmental defense. I hope we all learned something valuable today from her perspectives and her initiatives she has highlighted. Next, we have a featured presentation presented by Obi Agisabi. Obi Agisabi is a visionary leader in sustainability and environmental management, renowned for her expertise in ESG, environmental, social, and governance, strategies, and climate justice. As the founder of SCAN and the founder and CEO of EnvironFocus, an award-winning environmental consulting firm, she drives transformative solutions aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. A certified environmental professional and energy auditor, Obi brings over 20 years of experience leading cross-border sustainability initiatives, corporate social investment programs, and climate action projects. Her work focuses on fostering inclusive community development, advancing climate resilience, and promoting innovative, equitable solutions for a sustainable future. Passionate about bridging policies and grassroots impact, Obi is a speaker, advisor, and advocate for sustainable business practices, environmental justice, and ethical leadership. Through her ventures, she continues to inspire organizations and individuals to take bold, measurable steps towards a greener, more just world. I'll now pass it on to Obi.
Thank you, Shanika. And thank you, Karen, for that great keynote speech. It was really, really enlightening. There's really more we can do. A visual and data-driven overview of Canada's goals and that include net zero, circular economy, plastics ban, and how individual actions connect, with a call to action highlighting 5 personal actions that align with Canada's mandate of energy efficiency, zero waste, and biodiversity. I welcome you all again. So today we'll explore how each of us holds a piece of Canada's environmental future in our hands. Your individual mandate is not abstract. It's deeply personal and profoundly powerful. This is our national mandate, but it starts with you. So let's unpack how each element connects to your daily actions. Net zero by 2050, the carbon challenge. Canada's commitment is to reach net zero by 2050. Now, what you drive, how you heat your home, and even how you travel can reduce emissions. Every decision you make matters. How you contribute to net zero. These simple shifts create powerful outcomes when adopted at scale. Your lifestyle is your loudest climate vote. Now, circular economy and beyond recycling. Now, the linear economy is wasteful. So what's linear economy? You buy, you buy, you use, you dispose, you buy, you use, dispose, just straight, right? Circular economy keeps materials and products in use longer. So you're looking at, you're not just buying and disposing, you're buying, you're repairing, you're reusing, you redesign. No, that's your role. So how you can advance the circular economy? You choose products with less packaging. You support businesses using recycled materials. You share instead of buying new. Your consumption patterns shape supply chains. That's how powerful you are. Federal ban on harmful plastics is part of a broader strategy. Every reusable item you use keeps waste out of ecosystem. Biodiversity isn't just about wilderness. It's in your backyard, your local parks, and your community garden. Support local biodiversity initiatives, plant native species, protect habitats. That's your role. Environmental justice and inclusion. Everyone deserves clean air, safe water, and a healthy space, healthy spaces. Your role is to join or support local justice initiatives. Elevate underrepresented voices in climate solutions. That's your role. So how do you move from awareness to action? Like what one commitment will you make today? Small actions multiplied by millions taking the same action creates systemic change. These free resources on screen, like there's these free resources that you can take advantage of. They help track, they help you, they learn, you're able to learn from it, and you're able to act accordingly. So we make it easier for you to fulfill your environmental mandate. So the mandate isn't just governmental, it's generational, it's local, it's individual. So together we move from me to we. Happy World Environment Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Obi. That was a great presentation. Now I'll be passing it on to Malika.
Thank you, Shanika. The word mandate can sound top-down or official, but today we want to unpack what it actually means on a personal or community level. In the breakout groups, take a few minutes to discuss what the sustainability mandate means in your life, work, or community. Do you see it as a personal responsibility, a social expectation, or something else? We'll have about 10 minutes and then we'll come back and regroup. I just want to say thank you, everyone, and I hope we all had a productive conversation. And then if we would like, we can take a few minutes to discuss what we talked about in the breakout session. Our group talked a lot about just small habits that we've been doing to build our sustainability habits. So I shared that I would like to buy more secondhand clothes and maybe add thrifting to part of my shopping experience. So if anyone else would like to group talked about.
I can go. So our group talked about based diet. We all talked about like organic foods and like that making it more like equal values and eco-friendly. So like supporting those type of companies. And also we talked about educating not just our taking our knowledge and really educating others as well is something that we also talked about. Also participating in events as well is really important, such as one example would be like a community garden is something that we can all participate in. So that's something I would like to share with you guys.
Yeah, that's great. That stuff's really important.
Yeah. Okay.
And later we will give you the opportunity to show your commitment to the sustainability mandate with a pledge wall that will also be held on menti.com.
Before we proceed with the discussion, we will introduce two of the speakers, and they will each be given 5 minutes to present their initiatives. We'd like to introduce our first speaker, Kishan Basu, MSM, MBA. She's a globally recognized environmental and human rights activist. She's also the founder of Green Hope Foundation and the youngest ever winner of the International Children's Peace Prize. Her grasswork spans 28 countries, empowering over 500,000 youths and women, Forbes 30 under 30, and UN rights champion. He holds an MBA from Cornell and has spoken at over 500 international forums.
To work. Yeah, happy World Environment Day, everyone. Really delighted to join all of you on this very auspicious day. As was mentioned, my name is Gehekusha, and I am connecting with you from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And yeah, I wanted to take the opportunity to share with you a bit about who I am and how Green Hope Foundation works all across the world. So my journey started when at the age of 7, I saw the image of a dead bird with its belly full of plastic, and I was deeply disturbed by that. I kept wondering to myself, how can humans be so cruel as to allow an innocent creature to suffer through so much pain? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own journey, go out there on my own. And so on 5th June, World Environment Day 2008, which is my birthday, I decided to go out and plant my first tree on my 8th birthday. And being born on World Environment Day, actually, as a child, I was like, this is my life's mission. It's to become an eco warrior. But as I grew up, I realized that I would have to do a lot more to make this, vision that I had a reality and to actually live out this mission that I thought I was born with. And so as I started and continued my work on the ground, I was invited to speak at the United Nations. And my second ever UN conference was when I was 12. It was at Rio Plus 20. It was in Brazil, 50,000 delegates, but only 5 people under the age of 18. And that made me realize that there is a severe lack of inclusivity of young people, women, vulnerable communities in the sustainable development process. And so on my return home, I founded Green Hope Foundation. And as was mentioned, we now work in 28 countries with over 500,000 people. So 13 years later. So what do we do? Our work is, first of all, imparting education, so education for sustainable development through academies conducted by young people for young people from Indonesia to the US. So giving people power to act with knowledge and then translating that into ground level action. So We, for instance, build education infrastructure. So we've built our Academy of Hope for women and girls in rural Bangladesh that is solar powered. It functions as a sewing school for women and girls. It provides literacy skills to girls. And we use the sewing school actually as well to stitch sanitary napkins and menstrual health for the women in the climate vulnerable communities. We work to build solar computer labs that provide STEM and STEAM education to at-risk youth. So this is in rural Liberia, in the Sundarbans, which is the world's largest mangrove forest, and in Western India. And all of these communities are really marginalized and really, really climate vulnerable. So we make sure that the youth, and especially the girls, have access to this really important education. We distribute routers to the communities. We make sure that the children living in communities that are affected by climate change have access to education through our solar mobile libraries that takes books to directly to their doorsteps to make sure we don't have a lost generation. In climate disaster zones, we build solar street lights to make sure that women feel safe coming out of their homes in the evenings and children feel safe going to school at dawn. So this is in Bangladesh, this is in Liberia, and in Cambodia most recently. We also train women and distribute solar, electric, and eco cookers to protect their health while cooking and also reduce greenhouse gas emissions in their communities. We work in climate disaster zones where water insecurity is a huge issue. So we install deep bore tube wells, rainwater harvesting systems to make use of the increased monsoon seasons, distribute reusable water storage containers. So this is in Kenya, so that girls don't have to walk as much to fetch water and so they can use the time to go to school. And we build solar water farms that are distillation systems that purify groundwater and rainwater in small island developing states like Kiribati. So to address the influx of brackish water coming in due to rising sea levels. And most recently in Cambodia, in communities that are suffering disproportionately from pollution in their rivers and waterways. So obviously that means polluted water. So this provides them with clean drinking water. We also build sanitation stations in climate disaster zones to help with the hygiene of the people living there. This is in Bangladesh, this is in Kiribati. We also build toilets in the climate disaster zones so that people, and especially women, have the basic human right of access to a toilet, even in the face of disaster. And then we work on growing our own food. So these are children's board. They grow their own food in their homes, in their schools, in their local environments. This is in Peru. So we work with indigenous women on reclaiming the land that had previously been used for growing cash crops. So growing food there. In Kiribati, we grow food in pots with women because the soil is really salty because of rising sea levels. And here in Canada, we have our own farm that is solar powered. We grow our own food. And as you can see, it's like huge vegetables like these zucchinis. And then we donate them to the local food banks to solve food insecurity in the region. Our members practice composting in their homes. We utilize agrivoltaics, so solar power for agriculture to empower rural young and women farmers in Bangladesh and India. And we also work on empowering tiger widows, so women who've lost their husbands to tiger attacks in the mangrove forest of the Sundarbans. So training them on entrepreneurship through duck, chicken, and fish farming, and repopulating their local biodiversity, as well as making sure they earn a stable source of income. And then we've conducted over 2,000 cleanups all across the world, from the fjords of Norway to the canals of the Netherlands, beach and park cleanups, ravine cleanups here in Toronto, cigarette stop collection campaigns. We do plastic fishing, so like literally fishing the plastic out of waterways. We also train young people through field trips to recycling plants, so they know where their waste lands up. So that's both general waste recycling as well as e-waste recycling, like in the Netherlands. And then we practice upcycling through eco-fashion, so training young people on utilizing trash materials for clothes. In Canada, we work on freshwater turtle conservation, and in Oman and in Suriname, we work on sea turtle conservation. And we planted over 1.5 million trees all across the world, from Canada to the Barbados to Democratic Republic of the Congo, and over 650,000 mangroves all across the world, from Qatar to the Bahamas to the UAE to Suriname to Vietnam. And then we take that to the United Nations. So that's me addressing the General Assembly, and then working to make sure that we are bridging the gap between top-down and bottom-up processes through empathy, compassion, honesty, hard work, and purposefulness. So yeah, that's the journey of Green Hope Foundation, and our work every day is to make sure we celebrate World Environment Day every day through our ground level actions. Thank you.
Very much for such a lovely presentation and the amazing work your organization is doing. I was really intrigued about the using of solar to kind of like provide technology. So, and the different initiatives to show different ways that we can also celebrate World Environmental Day. So thank you. I would like to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Waldron. Dr. Ingrid Waldron is the Hope Chair in Peace and Health at McMaster University and a leading voice on environmental racism in Canada. She co-developed Bill C-226, which became the country's first environmental justice law in 2004. She's also the author of There's Something in the Water, which inspired a Netflix documentary. Her work spans environmental justice, mental health, and racial trauma in Black and racialized communities.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey in the Enrich project and some of the key activities that I've engaged in order to advance environmental and climate justice. So I founded the Environmental Noxiousness, Racial Inequities, and Community Health Project, the Enrich Project, in 2012 to address the social, ecological, political, and health impacts of environmental racism in Indigenous, Black, and other racialized communities, specifically in Canada. Environmental racism refers to racial discrimination in the disproportionate siting or location of toxic industries and other polluting industries, primarily in Indigenous, Black, and other racialized communities. And these are the communities, therefore, that are much more exposed to contamination and pollution from those industries that have been placed there by government and industry owners. This is how the late James Desmond, an environmental activist in the African Nova Scotian community of Lincolnville, defined environmental racism when I met with the community back in 2013. He says, the practice has been locating industrial waste sites next to African Nova Scotian, Native, and poor white communities, communities that don't have a base to fight back. You ask if that's environmental racism? It's environmental racism to its core. In founding the Enrich Project, my goal was to formulate more effective ways to address both distributive, spatial, and procedural components of environmental racism in these communities and inform policies and legislation about best practice approaches applicable to citizen engagement, environmental impact assessments, and uniform and non-discriminatory application of policies and processes related to the location, management, regulation, and evaluation of industrial polluters and other environmentally hazardous activities near to these communities. In 2020, the Enrich Project expanded its scope to examine the social, political, and economic factors contributing to climate injustices in Black and other communities. A climate justice framework, which is the framework that all of my climate work is premised on, recognizes that different communities will be impacted differently and unequally by climate change based on race, socioeconomic status, income, class, gender, age, disability, sexuality, and other social identities. Some of the main activities and achievements that have resulted through my work with the Enrich Project and its partners include the following. Just raising awareness about environmental racism and climate justice across Canada, doing that through different types of events such as symposiums and workshops and community meetings, conferences, consultations, public education. What I found when I started my work on environmental racism, specifically back in 2012, a lot of people had never heard of the term. In fact, they didn't think that I was doing anything credible because they didn't understand how the environment could be racist. So I knew that I needed to kind of do a lot of events just to educate people and to kind of explain the structural underpinnings of environmental racism, that it's about policy. It's about environmental policies that tend to be racist, that tend to place, as I said, these industries in particular communities. One of the things I also wanted to do was to develop a map using GIS analysis, because I was told early on that when you map things, it tends to be very credible. It's another source of data. You know, just like when you do research, that's data, but a map using GIS analysis is also data. And what's kind of interesting about this map is that it helped to address those skeptics who sent me emails, not really understanding what I was doing and not thinking what I was doing was credible. As soon as this map was published in Canadian Geographic CBC online, some people came back to me and said, oh, I can see it now. Because what this map does is it shows the location of toxic industries in both Indigenous communities and African Nova Scotian communities at that time in Nova Scotia, because I forgot to mention that I started my work on environmental racism in Nova Scotia when I was teaching at Dalhousie University. This obviously is a very flat map, but if you go onto my website, you will see one layer for Mi'kmaq Indigenous communities and a second layer for African Nova Scotian communities. So it's pretty strong evidence when you look at the map, when you go onto my website, that these toxic facilities are disproportionately placed in Indigenous and Black communities. Of course, I also engage in research. This photo is from a town hall that I held in 2023 with the African Nova Scotian community in South Shelburne, Nova Scotia. When I met Louise DeLille, that's the woman you see right at the front, I met her in 2015 and she said to me, Ingrid, everybody in my community has cancer. Like 98% of us have cancer. Do you think it's because of environmental racism? I said it could be, but we don't really know. So what we endeavored to do starting in 2023 is that I got together a group of scholars and community members, very multi-sectoral, very interdisciplinary team, to look at why are there such high rates of cancer in Shelburne. So we're looking at whether it's the dump that has been in Shelburne since 1942, whether it's something about African ancestry or genetics, whether it's about the structural determinants of health, such as race, gender, income, or whether it's about lifestyle factors, such as smoking, walking, exercise, nutrition. So we did some focus groups, interviews, and we also took some DNA samples, some blood samples from community members during that town hall in 2023. The focus groups have been completed, the interviews have completed. We have put out a report with the findings from the focus groups and from the interviews, and we're just waiting on the DNA sampling to come in. I've been told that it takes a long time. And once that comes in, then the cancer biologist on the team and the other biologist on the team will analyze that data and put out a report. I've also engaged in water testing. So many of these communities want their water tested because they want to know what contaminants are in their water, but they don't want the government to do it because they don't trust the government. So through my Enrich project, we started water testing projects in 2016 in Lincolnville and in Shelburne, and it worked out so well that we decided to form an NGO, a nonprofit organization called Rural Water Watch that still stands today, even though I'm no longer in Nova Scotia. This work continues through Rural Water Watch. We test water in rural communities, any rural community, doesn't have to be Black or Indigenous. and we tell people what's in their water. We go back to the community, we do workshops, we tell them about how to manage their drinking water supply. And we also started holding back in 2018 Well Water Day. Well Water Day is kind of an educational day where we use social media and we use on-site education to educate people about the need to keep your well healthy, because a lot of people in rural communities are on wells, right? And wells, if they're not taken care of, if you've had a well for 20 years, that's a health risk, right? So we try to teach Nova Scotians about, how to keep your well healthy, because a healthy well can improve your health, or can kind of address health issues that you may have, or that a community may have. So this is something that I'm really proud of, because it's something tangible that we can give back to the community. I've also written a book on environmental racism that was back in 2018. I would probably confidently say that this is the very first book on environmental racism that looks at both Indigenous and Black communities in Canada. I find that it's, when you look at publications, it's either focused on Indigenous people or Black people. And I would say that my book is the first ever to look at both communities. And this is the book that turned into a Netflix documentary. That was my first book in 2018. And through social media, through Twitter, I connected with Elliot Page. You might know Elliot Page from X-Men, the movie, and Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, and Juno. Juno was the movie I watched back in 2007. I actually saw it twice. Didn't know that in the future I would be meeting Elliot. But I loved Elliot's performance so much that I watched that movie twice. So in 2018, in October, I noticed that Elliot started following me on Twitter and started promoting the Enrich Project and started promoting my book, my very new book. And I didn't know who it was in the beginning. Then I realized it was the actor. I reached out, I DM'd him, and we had a call at the end of 2018, another call in 2019, and we decided to do some videos that we would stick on to Twitter. But then it became bigger. Elliot filmed me in April of 2019, and it got bigger and bigger because I said, why don't we turn this into a documentary, not short clips that we would throw onto Twitter? And everybody agreed. And we rushed to turn it into a 70-minute documentary. It actually filmed and premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 9th, 2019. And then we heard it was going to Netflix. Started streaming on Netflix March 29th, 2020, a few weeks after COVID hit. And at the same time, it started streaming on Netflix. It started streaming on Apple TV, Microsoft Xbox, and Amazon Prime. Legislation has been key for me. For me, everything starts with policy, as I said. If we're talking about discrimination in housing, discrimination in employment, discrimination in labor, discrimination in healthcare, it all starts with policy makers. So I've been wanting to kind of develop this bill, environmental justice bill, for a long time. And back in 2015, I met with Lenore Zan. She's a former politician, and we worked together to develop the very first environmental justice private members bill for Nova Scotia at that time. And that bill never passed into law. But then Lenore reached out to me in 2020, in February. She said, remember that Nova Scotia bill? And I said, yeah. She said, why don't we turn it into a federal bill for all of Canada? And I said, that would be perfect. So we did. We made the bill, the Nova Scotian bill, much more, I would say, robust. We were asking for more things in that new bill. And she put it forward to the House of Commons in Canada in February of 2020. But then she lost her seat as a politician when the snap election happened, when Trudeau called the snap election in September of 2021. So she was no longer a politician. We heard rumblings that Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader, might be interested now in sponsoring the bill now that Lenore Zan was out of the picture. And she did. She said, yes, I'm interested. I will sponsor the bill. And like Lenore, the bill went through Parliament nicely, very smoothly. But for the first time, it was now at Senate, and that never happened under Lenore. So now we had a bill going to first reading at Senate. Then it went to second reading. And then last year in 2024, in June, It went to third reading, and to our surprise, many people's surprise, it passed. And it was given royal assent on June 20th, 2024, becoming Canada's very first environmental justice law. I don't know if they even have that in the United States, but this was obviously groundbreaking, and I'm proud to have been part of it to co-develop this bill. As part of this bill, there's a new national environmental justice strategy, which is essentially a policy. And that strategy is about engaging communities across Canada that are impacted by environmental racism in consultations to hear about what they think this strategy should be about. So that is happening currently. And that National Environmental Justice Strategy will conclude next year. It also involves awareness raising in communities that may not be aware that they're experiencing environmental racism. It also involves a study that Environment and Climate Change Canada is leading. And it also involves a mapping project similar to my map. My map focuses on Nova Scotia, but this is going to be a Canada-wide map where they're tracking cases of environmental racism across Canada and the health impacts of environmental racism. So I'll conclude there on this very, very high note. I'm very excited to see what this strategy brings. And it's the first time I think government has reached out to communities about environmental racism and to allow them to be part of the solution. Finally, the communities that some of which I've been, dealing with now have a seat at the table to get involved in environmental policymaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Waldron, for your very insightful presentation on environmental racism and also the policies that affect BIPOC and Indigenous communities. Your work really sheds a critical light on the systemic structures that need to change and also the actions required to build a more just and equitable future, and also your amazing work on co-developing the C226. It's going to change history.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. So we're going to move forward to the panel discussion. I'll be moderating the discussion. The panel will include Dr. Waldron, Ms. Bursig, and Ms. Bassett. Each panelist will have a question directed at her, and other panelists will be given the opportunity to contribute her answer. There will be a minimum of one question per panelist depending on time. All right, so the first question is going to go to Ms. Bursig. You've worked extensively at the intersection of community organizing and environmental advocacy. How can grassroots efforts drive systemic change, especially in the fight against plastic pollution?
I would say that grassroots movements around the world that are really reflecting on how plastic's affecting their lives have been the most important thing that have driven governments and even corporations towards realizing that they have to change their ways. Like from the cleanups that happen all over the world, including in Canada, all the coastal cleanups, for example, where people identify the types of trash they're finding, which is most often beverage bottles, frankly, from Coke and Pepsi. Those things alone just started kind of sensitizing the people to the fact that, wow, there's a lot of plastic. Yes, it's filling the bellies of birds, but it's not simply because people are littering. It's simply because there is so much throwaway plastic that can't possibly be managed properly. And so people making these kinds of realizations and making their feelings about it public have just been essential, I think, to pushing governments and corporations to change their ways. I mean, we're not there yet, but people power is going to be what gets us over the hurdles, I think.
I think that's great. That's great. Does anybody want to add anything to that? Because I think that was a great answer. All right, great. So I'll move on to Ms. Bassett. So what does living the environmental mandate mean to you personally and professionally?
Oh, thank you for that question. Well, for me, like I mentioned, one being born on World Environment Day, like literally rewired my brain, and then seeing the picture of the dead bird was like, I was like, okay, yeah, I have to do something. So for me personally, it's literally every single action that I take needs to have some benefit for people and planet. And that to me is like really important. And that is actually the vibe that I bring to Green Hope Foundation as well, because I think that every single person has the change making potential to like, make that difference. And very often, and we work in so many schools around the world, we see that children are taught that to be successful, you need to get a lot of money, and that's it, not to be a good human being or, to take care of your planet. And so what I try to do professionally with Green Hope Foundation is make sure that every single person is able to just, unconsciously think about how their actions are impacting their community and the environment. And yeah, that is kind of the environmental mandate that, that I had growing up and that I still have. And professionally, that is what we do. And so that is why we're able to kind of continue to create impact both within Canada and across the world. Because, yeah, we're like, okay, how can we every single day through every single action of ours make a difference no matter where we are and no matter what experiences we have.
That's really great. Are you saying today's your birthday?
Yes.
Happy birthday.
You.
Happy birthday. Wishing you all the blessings.
Thank you so much.
And yes, even from your presentation, you do leave that mandate, and that's really, really excellent. And I'm really glad that you're here. I'm glad that you took time to come on your birthday as well. Oh my goodness.
For sure. World Environment Day is special. And I'm like, okay, yeah, absolutely. This is amazing.
That's really great. Does anybody want to add to that question? Because that's really what this is all about, leaving your mandate. And I know all you speakers are all leaving your mandate, which is so excellent to see it. And it's inspiring, and we're learning a lot from that.
Yeah, I would say is, I guess for the Enrich project, it's bringing together a team of multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral actors to address environmental racism and to look specifically at the systemic issues. The individual issues are good, in terms of what people themselves do in their homes, in terms of separating waste. But I also think there's a systemic issue that's much more challenging to address, which is, discriminatory policies, discriminatory environmental policies by government. So the Enrich's mandate is to address those discriminatory policies handed down by government with a multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral team, because since I've been doing the project, I realized that environmental racism is so interdisciplinary just by the people who approach me who want to help. They're from every single discipline, whether it's sociology or health or environmental science. And if we put our minds together, I think that's where the solution lies. It lies in interdisciplinary solutions. So I would say that's my main mandate.
That's great. That's great. So I'm going to move over to you, Dr. Waldron. Okay, so and I think you've actually answered one of the questions. Okay, directly. How can individuals and communities recognize and respond to environmental injustice in their own surroundings?
It's like first they need to get to know the communities near them that are being affected by environmental racism. So get to know those communities. Also open a book. I mean, there's lots of literature now, emerging literature on environmental issues. So read, kind of get a sense of what the issues are about. Look at, read the newspapers, read the literature on environmental issues impacting communities. Also get on the social media of these. This is something that I did when I started the work. I would just get on the social media of the indigenous communities to see what was happening, but also to see what they needed. They would also do these call outs to say that we need this, can anybody bring this up to our community? So get a sense of what they need. I would also say that there's so many organizations, whether you're talking about the David Suzuki Foundation, my organization, Environmental Defense, CAPE, so many organizations in Canada. If you go onto their websites, they have call outs. They they have petitions, they have these things that you can do. The things that you can do don't have to be big, huge things. They can be small things. Everything is meaningful. So if you're not really sure about what to do, and I think a lot of people don't, they feel overwhelmed, get onto the websites of many of these organizations and you will see what they're asking you to do, whether it's a petition or letter writing. The other thing I would say is to get to know the communities. One of the ways I tried to do that when I started this work was just to get to know them by attending events, right? So I'd go up to their events, get my face known, become somebody that they get to know, because a lot of this has to do with trust. And if they don't know you, they're not going to trust you and they're not going to want to work with you. So I just did a lot of attending events in the Black community and the Indigenous community so people can get to know me, start talking with people and start taking action, but know when to pull back. Sometimes you're so excited to help that you start to take over. These communities know exactly what they need. So it's like a dance, I say. It's like a dance. Know when to pull back and know when to come in, and always make sure that the community is leading. The communities are experts in their own lives. You might be an expert on environmental science, but they're an expert in their own lives. So make sure that they're always leading and that you are helping them, you're supporting them with respect to what they need at any particular time.
That's a great answer. Yeah, because a lot of people wonder how can they get involved, or they start and they wonder what next to do. And that letting the people lead their lives, like be the ones to lead initiatives that concern them, right? It's huge. It's really beautiful. So we are short on time, so we can't go another question, but is there any, I'm going to just throw a live where anybody participants will have just one question that they want to ask, one question. I think looking at the chat, I feel I saw something in the chat. Chat. There was a question asked in the chat, right? Someone was like, what is biodiversity? I saw that. What is biodiversity?
Someone has their hand raised.
Okay. Whose hand is raised? Oh, okay. Azumi.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so it's Evelyn Azumelboro. It's really amazing to be here, and I appreciate you putting this together. So the question I have is, when you're involved with communities, particularly indigenous communities that are affected by so much, how do you choose what cause to champion?
I guess I would say that they choose it. You don't choose it, right? Because it's back to what I said earlier, that they have to lead. I can't help with every cause, obviously, because I don't have expertise in everything, but I have expertise in environmental racism. I have expertise in engaging communities. So I think when Indigenous people reach out to me, it's always about environmental issues or health, because I'm a health researcher looking at the health impacts of environmental and climate injustices. So people kind of pretty much know what I have expertise in, and I guess they will go to other people who have expertise in other issues. So I think it's letting them decide what issue they want to focus on at any particular time. Yes, they have multiple issues in Canada: low income, poverty, mental illness, suicide, high rates of suicide, environmental injustices, low education, low employment. I mean, the Indigenous community fares worse than any other community in Canada. But what I found is that many of these issues are actually intersecting issues. They intersect with environmental issues, right? So low income is an environmental issue. They tend to put polluting industries in low income communities. Racism, right? All of these issues like labor and employment and mental health issues and health issues that Indigenous people face intersect actually with environmental issues. So sometimes if you're dealing with environmental issues, you're also simultaneously dealing with health issues, right? Because the health effects of environmental racism are huge. So I would say that because these issues are so intersectional, they're so overlapping, that even if you think you're focused on one issue, you are focused on other issues, and you can bring those other issues in. You don't want to be distracted, but once again, they're overlapping issues. So you could be doing several things at one time and addressing several issues at one time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Aldrin.
Thank you
So
very much for that.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, so it's 12:59 and we are at the end of our of our session, our time with you. So would have loved to do the pledge wall, right? But we don't have time to do it. So what we want you to do is what we want you to do is send us your pledges, right? We will reach out to you, send us your pledges. Tell us what you will do as a result of this webinar. We'll do a follow-up with all of you that have registered, and follow up with us on what you're going to do as a result of World Environment Day and your participation in this webinar. Also, with regards to just do a recap of where we are right now. So, okay, we also have a community challenge that we started. So you could go on our Instagram pages, our Facebook, see the Instagram that we have, the pledges that, the challenge that we have started, and that we would love you to participate in, because that is you doing your own bit, right? One action, multiple actions, systemic change, right? Also, we have the next webinar, July 15th, which is for World Youth Skills Day. We'll be celebrating, and that's the next webinar we're going to be having. Same format, yes. So use this opportunity to thank you all for joining us today for this important conversation. Your presence here shows a powerful commitment, not only to understand Canada's environmental goals, but also to take personal and collective actions to achieve them. So we've heard inspiring insights from our keynote speaker, explored data-driven perspectives on national priorities, listened to our wonderful speakers on the beautiful work that they are doing, on environmental racism, community development, and we're really, really proud of our speakers and really happy that they took time to come here. And wishing you a very happy birthday again, Ms. Basu.
Thank you.
And yeah, so with us, this United Nations International Day, we see it as a tool to raise awareness of global issues, and because it's global, people understand exactly what is being said when you say it, so it's easier to handle. So every individual action, whether reducing waste, supporting circular economy practices, or advocating for policy change, adds up. Okay, your environmental mandate is unique, but together our collective efforts form the foundation of a sustainable and just Canada. So we're thanking our keynote speaker, panelists, partners, and of course you, participants, right? Your engaged audience for making this webinar a success. So we will expect your pledges on what you're going to do. And please go on social media. We have hashtag scan WED 2025 and scan need to be mandate to stay connected. So as we close, I invite you to reflect on this. The journey to a sustainable future starts with one step, your step. Together we can turn need to live and build the resilient and thriving communities Canada deserves. Thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.